Welcome back. Very good morning to one and all. Hope you are all fine and doing well. And in the last class, during discussion on gravitation, we have dealt with the force of gravitation due to continuous distribution of mass. So for that I have given one example also. There is a rod whose mass is m, where the mass is distributed uniformly along to the length of the rod. And between the rod of mass m and a point mass, we have dealt with force of gravitation. And we have derived a formula also. So now here we are going to discuss another example to deal with the force of gravitation in the case of continuous distribution of mass. Because we could not apply F equal to G into M1 M2 by R square directly in such cases. For example, here look at this example here. There is a long rod and here there is a point mass. Let us suppose the mass of the rod is capital M. The mass of this rod is capital M. And here there is a point mass. Of course, you suppose the length of the rod is L. L is length of the rod, M is mass of the rod. And here there is a point mass. And the distance of the point mass from the rod is x. Distance of the point mass from the rod means automatically perpendicular distance. Now here, this is the point O, just for some time. I am going to calculate the force of gravitation on this point mass due to this rod of length L and mass M. See, the last example just we have discussed in the previous class. There the point mass is placed along the length of the rod. You do remember. But here the point mass is placed along a line perpendicular to the length of the rod. The difference you have to identify. Next, here this point mass might be symmetrical about the length or not. Symmetrical about the length of the rod. It means the angle made by the rod at the point mass will be same by both the ends. If A and B are the ends of the rod, whatever the angle made by this end A at this mass will be same as the angle made by B at this mass. So these two angles will be equal. Then I say the mass is located symmetrically about the length of the rod. But it is not a compulsory. So that it can be like this is theta 1 and here it is theta 2. It can be. It is not compulsory that your mass is located symmetrically about the length of the rod. If you wish to say that theta 1 should be equal to theta 2, but need not. So here I am going to calculate the force of gravitation on the point mass due to the rod. That is my point. Have you got it? This is the question. Now I am going with the calculation part. So to calculate the force of gravitation due to the rod of the point mass, let me take for some time here, I am going for the mathematical part of the calculation. Listen carefully. These are the two ends of the rod A and B. Here perpendicular distance of the mass is x. And let me suppose a small element of the rod of mass dm and is at a distance y from the point O. As it is at a distance y, this distance should be taken as dy. Let me write like this. This distance will be dy and whose mass is dm. Now this small element will try to attract the point mass with a small force df. And let us suppose the element is at an angle theta for some time. So I repeat, To calculate the force of gravitation due to the rod on the point mass, I have taken a small element of the rod whose length is dy at a distance y from the point O. And the force of gravitation on the point mass due to this element is dF. As it is a gravitational force, it is directed like this. And suppose the element is at an angle theta. Similarly, on the other side also, there will be existence of a similar element. Similar element can exist on the other side, and we will try to pull in this way with the dF. The dF is the force of gravitation between the element and the point mass. Now anyway, according to vector resolution, this dF will find two components. dF cos theta along the perpendicular line and dF sin theta vertically up. Similarly, this dF will find dF cos theta horizontally and dF sin theta vertically. So whatever the dF, force of gravitation between the element and the point mass, will have its components dF cos theta horizontally, dF sin theta vertically. Similarly, on the other side, there is another element with force dF having a horizontal component dF cos theta and vertical component dF sin theta. Now here people, you may think that this dF sin theta vertically opposite to each other, so they may cancel, but not. The reason it is, number of elements above the point O need not to be same as the number of elements below the point O, because your mass is not located symmetrically about the length of the rod. For example, if theta 1 greater than theta 2, for example, if theta 1 greater than theta 2, then number of elements in the lower portion will be more. Then due to that, this dF sin theta will be more vertically down compared to vertically up. If theta 2 is more, then number of elements in the upper portion will be more. Then this dF sin theta in upward direction will be having more components than downward components. So these two vertical components need not to be cancelled each other. When they will cancel, when the mass is located symmetrically about the length of the rod, I mean theta 1 equal to theta 2, then these vertical components will cancel, because the number of smaller elements above the point O will be same as the number of elements below the point O. So they will cancel. But here they are not symmetrically located. That is the reason why the net force will exist in vertical direction and also in horizontal direction. In horizontal direction, there is no question of cancelling, because due to this dF cos theta towards the rod, due to this dF also dF cos theta towards the rod. If I wish to calculate force of gravitation due to entire rod, I have to take the similar elements and I have to integrate all dF cos theta. So finally my point is, there is existence of a net horizontal force which is not equal to 0, and a net vertical force will exist on the point mass which is not equal to 0. This net force in vertical direction will be in upward direction. The net force will exist in vertically upward direction when this dF sin theta is more, when number of components in the upper region are more, means if theta 2 greater than theta 1. But this net force vertically downwards when theta 2 less than theta 1, based on number of components. So if theta 2 is greater, number of components in the upper portion will be more. So these vertical upward components will be more than downward components. So net force will be in upward direction. In that way, your net force can be either in upward direction or in downward direction. But this horizontal force is always towards the rod, the horizontal force. So how to calculate this net horizontal force? Yes, coming to the point. The net horizontal force is integral of dF cos theta. You have to integrate all dF cos theta values, then you will get net horizontal force. This is equal to, here onwards the mathematical part will be continuing. This is equal to integral of dF, force of gravitation between the element and the point mass. So it is G, M1 point mass, M2 element mass. I told you I have taken small element of mass dm and the length dy. So G m1 m2 by r square, distance separation from the point mass to the element, let us take it as r. So here r square into cos theta. But the very interesting point, dm is the mass of the element of length dy. So I can write dm equal to lambda into dy, where lambda is mass per unit length, which you have learned already. Lambda is mass per unit length of the rod. Here this length is dy and its mass is dm, so that dm equal to lambda into dy. At the same time, here I suppose the horizontal distance of the point from the rod is x, and this hypotenuse distance is r, and this distance is y, of course. As I need to substitute r square, look at this. Let me write a cos theta equation which is adjacent side by hypotenuse. I am writing here, as these are all some additional points, I am writing aside. You can write in the margin. Cos theta equal to adjacent side x by hypotenuse r. Then I can write r equal to x by cos theta. Reciprocal of cos theta is secant theta. So that your r equal to x into secant theta. R value. So let me substitute now. This is equal to integral of gm. dm means lambda into dy by r square means x square secant square theta into cos theta. Now little more explanation. dy, how to substitute to dy? This is a little more mathematics. You see here this opposite side is y, this adjacent side is x. So I can write tan theta equal to y by x. So I am writing here tan theta is equal to y by x. So that y equal to x into tan theta. But as I need to substitute to dy, let me differentiate on both sides. Derivative of y equal to x constant, keep it aside. Derivative of tan theta is secant square theta into d theta. Y equal to x into tan theta. If you take derivative of y, dy equal to x into secant square theta into d theta. Means we have differentiated with respect to theta. So that dy by d theta equal to x into secant square theta. Then dy equal to x into secant square theta into d theta. So if I substitute here, integral of g m lambda by x square secant square theta into dy, x into secant square theta cos theta, let me write earlier, into d theta. Now secant square theta will cancel, 1x will cancel. So take out the constant terms, g m lambda by x integral of cos theta d theta. So you are integrating with respect to theta. So here from where to where you have to integrate? You have the elements from B to A. You have elements from B to A, lower end of the rod to upper end of the rod. But the lower end of the rods are causing in opposite direction compared to the upper end of the rod. That's why you have to integrate between the limits minus theta 1 to plus theta 2, because minus this is lower end and theta 2 is the upper end, that's minus theta 1 to plus theta 2. In between the limits you have to integrate. So if you have gone through this, gm lambda by x into cos theta integration is sin theta, integral cos theta is sin theta, between the limits minus theta 1 to plus theta 2. So first upper limit, gm lambda by x into first upper limit sin theta 2 minus now lower limit sin of minus theta 1. The value of theta we have to first substitute first upper limit, next to lower limit. Lower limit is minus theta. But you know sin of minus theta equal to minus sin theta, that minus this minus becomes plus. So the final equation I am writing here, f is equal to gm lambda by x into sin theta 1 plus sin theta 2 is the final equation, which is the net force in horizontal direction. This is the final conclusion. The net force in horizontal direction can be obtained as the integral of df cos theta. So df g m1 m2 by r square into cos theta. Now we have converted the entire equation in terms of theta because we have to integrate between the limits b to a. So they are in terms of theta 1 and theta 2. That's why limits are minus theta 1 to plus theta 2. Integral of cos theta is the sin theta between the limits minus theta 1 to plus theta 2. So that first upper limit sin theta 2 minus lower limit sin of minus theta 1. But sin of minus theta is minus sin theta. Minus minus becomes a plus. So that's all about the net horizontal force towards the rod. But I told you, as the mass is not located symmetrically about the length of the rod, so there will be existence of net vertical force also. If theta 1 equal to theta 2, net vertical force will be 0. There is no net force in vertical direction. There will be net force in horizontal direction. If theta 1 equal to theta 2. But they are not equal. So there will be vertically upward force. That can be obtained on integrating df sin theta. So in place of df cos theta, you will have df sin theta. The remaining entire calculation is same. Here instead of cos theta, you will come across sin theta, where integral of cos theta, sin theta will become minus cos theta. Minus cos theta limits to be applied. Then you will get a net vertical force in upward direction. So net vertical force is integral of df sin theta. The entire calculation will be same. Instead of cos theta, finally you will have here sin theta. Here minus cos theta, because the integral of a sin theta is equal to minus cos theta. That's integration. And we will substitute the limits. Anyway, I write the conclusions for net horizontal force and the net vertical force. See, these derivations no one will ask you. You need to remember the conclusions. The last class, we have dealt with the force of gravitation between the point mass and the rod. Wherever point mass is placed along the length of the rod. Here point mass is placed perpendicular to the length of the rod. Remember, there is a difference. So this is what you need to understand, little more mathematical application. But anyway, there is not at all required to by heart this derivation. You have to learn that theta, so that you will come to know why there is a net force exists in upward direction, why there is a net force in downward direction vertically, how there is a possibility for net force in horizontal direction. This is all you will come to know. Please note down this calculation. Now in the next part, I will write conclusions of FH and FV. Once note down this. So here I am writing conclusions for net horizontal force, net vertical force. So look at this. Net horizontal force can be obtained on integrating df cos theta, and our final answer is gm lambda by x into sin theta 1 plus sin theta 2 is the net horizontal force, and the net vertical force is obtained on integrating df sin theta. Of course, I told you, if you simplify this, you will get integral of sin theta d theta in between the limits minus theta 1 to plus theta 2. And I told you integral of sin theta is minus cos theta between the limits minus theta 1 to plus theta 2. So that this is equal to first upper limit minus cos theta 2. In the place of theta, just you write theta 2. I have written upper limit in this bracket term minus, now write lower limit as it is, minus cos of minus theta 1. So first you have to write upper limit in the given term, next lower limit in the given term, in between minus. So that this is equal to here cos of minus theta is cos theta, no doubt. Sin of minus theta is minus sin theta. Cos of minus theta is cos theta only. So this is minus cos theta 2. This minus into this minus plus, this minus in this minus plus. Cos of minus theta is cos theta only. So finally this is cos theta 1 minus cos theta 2. This is 1 minute, just a minute. Here you will have the constant terms, I forgot. When you simplify this, you will have gm lambda by x as it is, into gm lambda by x as it is, that will be left like in the earlier case. So gm lambda by x. Here also it is gm lambda by x. When you integrate df sin theta, these constant terms will be left as usual. Like in the earlier integral cos theta, you will be left with integral sin theta. Remaining terms will be remaining same, gm lambda by x. Now the interesting point is, if theta 1 greater than theta 2, this implies theta 1 greater than theta 2, then cos theta 1 less than cos theta 2. Because cos 0 degrees 1, cos 30 degrees root 3 by 2, cos 45 degrees 1 by root 2, cos 60 degrees 1 by 2. So as the theta value increasing from 0 to 90, cos theta value will decrease. That's why if theta 1 is greater, cos theta 1 will be lesser. Then here net vertical force will be gm lambda by x into cos theta 2 minus cos theta 1, because cos theta 2 is greater, I told you, as theta 1 is greater. In which direction? I have written, when theta 1 is greater, then the number of elements in the lower portion will be more, so that the force will be in vertically downward direction. These are very important conclusions in the case of net vertical force. With the net horizontal force, no more issues. It will be horizontally towards the rod. But while coming to net vertical force, directions are very, very important. If theta 1 is less than theta 2, then cos theta 1 will be more than cos theta 2. That is, net vertical force will be, based on the given question, you have to move on. Gm lambda by x into cos theta 1 minus cos theta 2, but will be in what direction? Upward. So, when you are calculating force of gravitation due to a rod at a point mass, and the mass is located at a distance x, the force of gravitation due to the rod on a point mass. Of course, I told you the point mass is not located symmetrically. One end of the rod making an angle theta 1, the other end of the rod is making an angle theta 2. I told you this already. So this is a net horizontal force, and the net vertical force will be either vertically up or vertically down. The net vertical force. It can exist either vertically upward direction or vertically downward direction. So that net force of gravitation on the particle is root of horizontal force square plus vertical force square. Because you learnt vectors. Net horizontal force, net vertical force. Two forces acting on the particle simultaneously. Then the resultant force is root of a square plus b square, since a bar and b bar are perpendicular. So, while calculating the force of gravitation due to a rod at a point mass located perpendicular to the length of the rod. Point mass is located at a distance, at a perpendicular distance x from the rod. Remember. Then it will have two components, Fh and Fv. So net force on the particle is root of Fh square plus Fv square. If you wish to know the angle at which the resultant is acting, then tan alpha is equal to Fv by Fh. Alpha with horizontal direction, because the horizontal component is in the denominator. These are all the basics of vectors. You have learned vectors at 8th standard already, vectors in the resultant, so that I have connected. This is the final conclusion of the calculation point. So earlier, whatever the derivation, whether you learned or not, but the conclusions are very important. So what is the question? What is the force of gravitation due to a rod on a point mass at a perpendicular distance x? We'll have two components, Fh and Fv. Gm lambda by x into sin theta 1 plus sin theta 2 gm lambda by x into cos theta 1 difference cos theta 2. Difference అని ఎందుకు అంటున్నాను అంటే it can be either cos theta 2 minus cos theta 1 or cos theta 1 minus cos theta 2 based on the given condition. So that's simply difference. A difference B. A difference B means it can be either A minus B or B minus A. We go for greater minus smaller. That's why I'm reading it as cos theta 1 difference cos theta 2 into gm lambda by x is the vertical force. These are the conclusions that you need to remember. And finally, the net force is root of FH square plus FV square. Now, in this concept, we will go for special cases. What are the special cases? No doubt. You have to go for special cases in this concept. No doubt. The first case is if the mass is located symmetrically about the length of the rod. Hope you are writing. If the mass is located symmetrically about the length of the rod, then theta 1 equal to theta 2. Then, hope you are writing, then Fv equal to 0 means net force in vertical direction will be 0. Fv will be equal to 0 because theta 1 equal to theta 2 you have to substitute in our formula so that Fv equal to 0 when theta 1 equal to theta 2 and Fh equal to horizontal force equal to gm lambda by x into sin theta plus sin theta will be 2 sin theta. That's it. Next, second case. If the rod is of infinite length, so till now you have dealt with a rod of a finite length, and the special case is the mass is located symmetrically so that theta 1 equal to theta 2. But now the rod is of infinite length means this AB is of infinite length. When this AB is of infinite length, theta 1 goes to infinite, theta 2 goes to infinite. It means theta 1 equal to 90 degrees, theta 2 equal to 90 degrees. So that Fh equal to gm lambda by x into sin theta 1 plus sin theta 2, 1 plus 1 because theta equal to 90. This is equal to 2 gm lambda by x. And Fv equal to vertical force equal to rod is of infinite length. So theta 1 equal to theta 2 equal to 90. Both are equal. So net force in vertical direction will be 0. So ultimately there is a net force only in horizontal direction. Next, third case. This is rod of infinite length, but our point mass is placed at one end of the rod at a distance x only. This rod starting point A, ending point infinite. Your mass is placed at one end of the rod. Then as it is placed at one end of the rod, theta 1 will be 0, theta 2 goes for 90. So theta 1 is 0, theta 2 is 90. Sir, if I place at this end, then theta 2 0, theta 1 will be 90. So on the infinite side, theta becomes 90 degrees. So as the mass is placed at this end, the lower angle theta 1 will be 0, theta 2 goes for infinite. Then immediately Fh equal to gm lambda by x into sin theta 1 plus sin theta 2, sin 0 plus sin 90, finally 1 equal to gm lambda by x. And vertical force is equal to gm lambda by x into cos 0 degrees minus cos 90 degrees. Cos 90 degrees 0, cos 0 degrees 1. So your answer is gm lambda by x. Both are equal in magnitude. So net force equal to root of x square plus y square because it has both the components. So in that way you can keep different conditions in the question. See, all this content, make sure that you are following properly. because once you are up to the mark with the basic knowledge of gravitation, the further subtopics in gravitation will be more easy. I will get back to these points. I will use these conclusions in the coming classes also to explain another subtopics. So if you are not familiar with these conclusions and concept, not derivation, conclusion and concept, if you are not familiar, if you are not preparing, the coming concepts of gravitation you can't understand and the electrostatics you can't understand. That's right. Make sure that you are following through the derivation, but make sure you are very perfect with the conclusion and the concept. Then things will be fruitful in the coming classes. No doubt. Here, another interesting part. The force of gravitation due to a ring of mass capital M and radius capital R on a point mass placed on the axis of the ring. This is axis of the ring. This is center of the ring. See, this is a three-dimensional view that you need to imagine. This is the ring. Now here, this is the axis of the ring. See, this is your ring. You are placed like this. Now this will be axis of the ring. Here there is a point mass located. So when the point mass is located on the axis of the ring, it will be symmetric about every point on the ring. It means it will be equidistant from any point on the ring. If you join all these lines, you will get a conical shape. This is the ring. Here there is axis of the ring. Now here you place a point mass. So your point mass will be symmetric from every point on the ring. It will be equidistant. Of course, x is the distance of the point mass on the axis of the ring. And let us suppose a small element of the ring of mass dm is at a distance r from the point mass. So that every element on the ring will be at a distance r from the point mass. So what will happen here? There is a small force of gravitation dF due to this small element which is at an angle theta. So this will have two components, dF cos theta, write x here, and dF sin theta. Like this there are many more elements, but all the vertical components gets cancelled, because like this there will be another element on the other side and will cause dF in this way, and will have dF sin theta vertically downwards. So those two dF sin theta will get cancelled. Since the mass is located symmetrically on the axis of the ring, your point mass is symmetric about every element on the ring. It is equidistant from every point on the ring. So all vertical components will be nullified. So net force will exist only in horizontal direction, which is integral dF cos theta. This is equal to integral of dF g into m1 into m2 by r square into cos theta. Cos theta equal to adjacent by hypotenuse x by r. This is equal to integral of a constant terms, g constant, small m constant, x constants, distance of the point from the center of the ring, x constant, r square into r, which is r cube. R cube also constant, because here small r square equal to capital R square plus x square, because hypotenuse, r square plus x square equal to r square. So as capital R and x constant, small r will be constant. Remember that. Into integral of dm is left. Integral dm means all these small elements to be integrated. Then you will get mass of the ring. So your final answer is g small m into x by r cube into capital M. So the force of gravitation on the point mass due to the ring is g capital M small m by r cube. R cube means r square plus x square whole power 3 by 2. Because r equal to r square plus x square whole power 1 by 2 or square root, you know. As r square equal to this much, r equal to our square root. For this cube, then it will be 3 by 2 into x. So if you have taken a ring of mass capital M and radius capital R, ring of mass capital M and radius capital R. Now on the axis of the ring there is a point mass M at a distance x. I repeat, we have taken a ring of mass M and on the axis of the ring there is a point mass at a distance x from its center. Then the force of gravitation will be towards the center of the ring, because these vertical components will get cancelled. The net force will be towards the center of the ring, which is integral of df cos theta, that is f equal to g capital M small m by r square plus x square whole power 3 by 2 into x, where x is the distance of the point mass from the center on the axis of the ring. Capital R is the radius of the ring. Capital M is mass of the ring. Small m is point mass. This is another question of force of gravitation due to the point continuous distribution of mass, which is a ring. F equal to gmm by r square plus x square whole power 3 by 2 into x. Sir, if I am coming to the center of the ring, when you come to the center of the ring, then x becomes 0, so that net force becomes 0. If your point mass coming to the ring, you may get a question, sir, why do my point mass will come to the center? Because your point mass experiencing a net force towards the center of the ring along the axis. So it will move, it will accelerate towards the center. Once it comes to the center, then x becomes 0, so that net force will be 0, because net force equation here x equal to 0. So that the point mass do not experience any force when it comes to the center. Then you have to get the doubt, sir, will it stay there forever? No, because your point mass moves with acceleration until that moment. Your point mass is moving with acceleration, increasing velocity towards the center of the ring. So once it comes to the center, though net force on the particle is 0, but because of inertia, it will continue its journey on to the other side. As the point mass moving to the center of the ring, at the center of the ring, no force will be experienced by the point mass. But because of inertia, until then it is accelerating with increasing velocity. So by the moment it is going to reach this point, it has some velocity. So as the net force 0, it wishes to continue in the same direction. So it wishes to continue in the same direction. Inertia of motion. But it can't go continuously. The reason is, once your point mass goes beyond the center, again force of gravitation starts playing towards the center. Earlier force of gravitation towards the center you have seen. Now once the point mass goes onto the other side, again force of gravitation plays, so that your particle decelerates, finally comes to rest. But due to force of gravitation, again moves forward, again goes on to the other side, again comes to stop. So what you have to understand, when the particle is moving towards the center of the ring, due to inertia, it goes on to the other side. But because of force of gravitation of the ring, it will decelerate to rest. Then it will come back. Why it will restart its journey? Because there is a continuous force of gravitation towards the center. So that again it will return to the center. But at the center it will not halt. Because of inertia, it will continue to the other side. Once it has gone to the other side and moving away from the center, but will experience force of gravitation towards the center. So that again particle will come to rest. So what you need to understand, if this is the center of the ring, the force of gravitation always acts towards the center of the ring. Whether the particle is either to the left side or to the right side of the center, the particle always experiences a force towards the center of the ring. Hope you got clarity. That's the point what you need to understand. So that your particle will execute a vibratory motion. Your particle will execute a vibratory motion. That's the point what you need to understand. But here there is an additional point to explain. You please note down, still there is a little more conditions to explain this. So the force of gravitation due to the ring at a point mass, F equal to gmm by x square plus r square whole power 3 by 2 into x. Now in that case, your point mass moves towards the center, will come to rest, but because of inertia will continue and again will come back. So ultimately the point mass will execute a vibratory motion. Right now. Now here, few conditions if I am placing. If I am placing few conditions, like in that case, r, radius of the ring, is far greater than x. R is far greater than x. Then F is equal to G capital M small m by r square plus x square becomes r square because r is far greater than x. X square can be neglected. Whole power 3 by 2 into x. Then this is equal to F equal to G capital M small m by r power 3 because 2 will get cancelled into x. G constant, capital M constant, small m constant, capital R constant. X varies because your point mass moving towards the center, x is going to vary. This is all constant. So I can write F is equal to some constant into x. So that F directly proportional to x. Means the force of gravitation which is acting towards the center varying directly proportional to x. X means distance of the mass from the center. So then that vibratory motion becomes simple harmonic motion. SHM. You write SHM. Abbreviation is simple harmonic motion. So when do we call vibratory motion as simple harmonic motion? Means a vibratory motion will be treated as a simple harmonic motion when the force acting on the particle varying directly proportional to the distance from the fixed point. The fixed point is O, which is called mean position. In vibratory motion, you know about what fixed point your particle is executing to and fro motion. We call it as a mean position. So x is the distance of the particle from the mean position, where mean position is the center of the ring. So if the force acting on the particle varying directly proportional to the distance of the point, but in opposite direction. Why opposite direction? Because the distance of the particle will be measured away from the center, but the force of gravitation is towards the center, so that F and X are always in opposite direction. And under this condition, F directly proportional to X. Of course, opposite direction. Such vibratory motion in which F directly proportional to minus X, then we call it as a simple harmonic motion. Here, I should not call the motion as simple harmonic. Here, the motion of the particle is only vibratory motion. But under this particular condition, R greater than X, R is far greater than X, then you will get F equal to Kx. So F is directly proportional to X. X is the distance of the particle from the mean position or from the center, which is directed away from the center. Because the distance will be measured away from fixed point. But the force of gravitation is towards the center always. So that they are in opposite direction. That negative sign indicates F and X are in opposite direction. F is force acting on the particle in vibratory motion towards the center or towards the mean position, towards the fixed point. But X is displacement or distance of the particle away from the mean position. So that negative sign indicates F and X are in opposite directions. And moreover, according to this mathematics, under this condition, F varies proportional to X. So such vibratory motion in which the force acting on the particle varies directly proportional to X but in opposite direction, we call simple harmonic motion. So this is a little more extension to the concept of force of gravitation on a point mass due to a ring, F equal to gmm by r square plus x square whole power 3 by 2 into x. But there is a continuity for this. Due to force of gravitation, your particle moves towards the center of the ring. But because of inertia, it will try to go on to the other side. But due to force of gravitation, again it will return journey towards the center. Again due to inertia, will go on to the other side. So it will execute a vibratory motion about the fixed point called center of the ring. We call it as a mean position. Because to and fro motion about a fixed point is called vibratory motion and the fixed point is called mean position. It is the center of the ring. Now the force that is responsible for this to and fro motion we call restoring force. So this F is gravitational force which acts to restore the position of the particle to the center. We call it as a restoring force. That's why you see the force is always acting towards the center of the ring. Means the force always trying to keep the particle to the center. That's why it is a restoring force. Such a restoring force will be directly proportional to X but in opposite direction under this condition. Then such vibratory motion is called simple harmonic motion. Sir, if this condition is not satisfied, then the motion is simply vibratory motion. If this condition is satisfied, then that vibratory motion can be named as simple harmonic motion. So, I repeat, a vibratory motion of the particle in which restoring force will be directly proportional to its distance from the mean position but in opposite direction is known as simple harmonic motion. So this is all for today's class, force of gravitation due to continuous distributed mass. In the next class we go for another subtopic. Make sure that you are following through each and every point carefully regarding today's class. Take care.